Welcome to the New Humans, New Earth Summit, where our mission is to empower you with inspiration, healing, and support, because it's who we become that changes the world. Your host for this session is shamanic teacher, healer, and author of Spirit Walking, a course in shamanic power, the North Shaman, and shamanic creativity, Evelyn C. Riesdyk, who is also the creator of the New Humans, New Earth Summit. She has another amazing guest coming up right away. Take it away, Evelyn.
And I do have an amazing guest with me. This is Renee Baribeau, and she is also referred to as the Practical Shaman. She's an author, a wind whistler, an inspirational mentor, respected business coach, dynamic spiritual teacher, and keynote speaker. Renee is well known for her no-nonsense, tell-it-like-it-is approach in her 10-month shamanic apprenticeship program. Her Nautilus Gold award-winning Hay House book, Winds of Spirit, Ancient Wisdom Tools for Navigating Relationships, Health, and the Divine, helps others to achieve successful lifestyle practices by aligning to their sacred magnetic north. As a community advocate, Renee holds an executive leadership position with the behavioral health industry as a brand manager at Monterre Behavioral Health and Renewal Health Group. Welcome, Renee. We are excited to hear what you have to share.
Well, it's really nice to be here with you and all of the listeners today. And we're right after the equinox, so we're really at a great auspicious time, and I really look forward to sharing this message with you all.
I'm delighted. So if you'd like to start with why the topic that you're going to share is something that is like, you can't wait to share.
Well, the topic is so crucial for these times, because I think the shamanic, the spiritual, and I kind of wrote it to shamanism, but the spiritual community in general has really been, in my mind, we've been preparing for 30, 40 years for this precise moment. And it's like we showed up and we forgot we were trained. We forgot that our job was to hold space for the community, to bring back harmony. And we've gotten right into the middle of the fist fighting and the separation. And it's really disheartening. But for me, there's a lot of hope in the remembering.
Mm-hmm. I know I was struck, and I'm sure the people participating were struck by the idea we could recover from the kind of polarization fatigue that we have. We have so much. It's the culture has been split into these two camps on so many different levels that it's, you can feel the turmoil, and it's almost like shaking the tree to get all of the stuff that has been troubling out in the open. But I want to hear how we can recover from some of the, you just start to feel burdened by all the polarization around us.
Right. And I think it's really a matter of just remembering what our shamanic tools are. So I have a presentation for that, and actually a journey at the end to see where you might be polarized in your thinking, your feelings, your actions, and then how to recover from that and bring that back to source. We're all one wind breath. We're just all connected through the wind. And I think once we remember that and step back into this rightful place of ourselves as spiritual leaders, we will remember what our work really is.
And it's true. We all of us have a piece of that spiritual leadership, even
Right.
though people may not believe that about themselves. That each one of us that lifts ourselves up and resolves things inside of us, it helps to move the collective forward.
Absolutely. And, so that's kind of really what I re-envisioned for this session today.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to give you all the time you need and not interrupt. So go for it.
Okay. Well, I have a slide presentation. Oh, can they give me? Okay. After all, I am the practical shaman.
You are the practical shaman.
Oops. Oh, I got to the end. We're going straight to the journey. All right. Can you see my slides?
I can.
Perfect. All right, everyone, get ready for this ride. Some of it, so today I've kind of divided it in a few things where I'm going to really talk about how we're polarized and what polarization looks like in nature, because polarization itself is very natural in the big scheme of things, as is what's going on right now in this part of the collective. So, there will be maybe if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And again, welcome. So my first premise here is that you're here today, right? You're here. So that means you are ready. And otherwise you wouldn't be on this webinar. You just would not be called to something called New Humans. And what's pictured here is I was a chef in my earlier career, and I think that everything is interrelated. All experiences count, and especially the chef experience counted because it really reminded me about this mise en place, which is in place. Things are in place, and that means we're ready to cook. For me, I know that I started the spiritual journey in my 30s with a fire walk. I went to AA, I went to treatment. I did all of these things. I found an Ayurvedic doctor. And then I really started a shamanic path about, I don't know, my mid to late 30s. And, I've continued it ever since. It started in an inipi where, I folded blankets and carried rocks and collected wood for 10 years. And that was the beginning. But that was just the pasta on the plate. It wasn't the whole tomatoes or basils or all the other things that you need in order to recover from this polarizing time we live in. We need all of these ingredients. And just imagine if each and one of you is one of these ingredients, we need all of us in order to make a scrumptious dish for dinner. I did direct this to shamans because, as many of you know, I host the Shamans Cave with Sandra Ingerman every week, and she reminds me all the time that I'm a shaman. I was a reluctant shaman. It took me, I think, 2 years sitting on the Shamans Cave before I realized that, oh yeah, I was really picked out and plucked out and called so many times, but it was like an aha moment. So I'm hoping for you during this talk, you'll have that aha moment if you're not really clear what your role is as a shaman in this time. And if you're not a shaman and you practice Reiki or one of the any other energy practices, you can stay too, because you might be the olives for the sauce. And so we are all needed right now. And remember this, I just told you that I started in my early 30s. So I guess I'm dating myself that I'm going to be 65 next month. And so I've been training for 35 years for this very important pivotal moment. Just like working in a kitchen where you learn to chop, you learn to cut vegetables, you work your way up. Well, the more you do it, the more skilled you are at it. So we have all of the tools. We just forget to go get them. A week ago, somebody was throwing some energy my way. And, my first thought was I turned out, who can help me? Well, then I turned in. What do I need to do? What no trespassing signs do I need to put out? We get so wrapped up in the big scheme of things, we forget that we have all of the tools in our toolbox. So this is what this renovation, restoration to recovery really is about. We're going to pull apart all these tools we have, and we're going to look at how we can use them. What's happening, instead of becoming the mediators of our culture, we're in a gap time. I call this gap space the time between the Holocene and the Anthropocene. We're kind of, one cycle never comes to a complete end without being an overlay with another cycle. And in the wind work, we call that gap time. And that's where magic can happen. But not if you're divisive and you're, fighting and you're looking the other way and you're not remembering your tools. You're kind of it's kind of like you've come to an end of a thing, and it's like the roast that needs to rest. So we're in this place where we can actually find this space to reassemble ourselves in a more strong and more powerful way. And one of the big things that I see people doing is judging what is light and what is dark. How do you know? How do you know how do you know that you're so right and they're so wrong? That's my question. It's like, how do I know? I know what's right for me. I know what's right in my community. Right now, my community, I joined the board because we're having a conversation about the future of our water. What is more important than my home community having a conversation about the future of the water? So sometimes we like to, project ourselves out of our body over into somebody else's issue that's not even anything we can have power and control over. And what do? We become more and more separated from ourselves and the things that really matter in our lives. So you're going to learn about the dung beetle here in a minute. And so just remember that I'm going to tell you a story about how the dung beetle uses the light and uses the darkness to get to their home. So first of all, what is polarization? So polarization in and of itself is not a good or bad quality. That's why we have pink and blue here, and it's not a masculine or feminine. It's the force that empowers polarization is tribalism. It's clustering ourselves into groups that compete against each other in a zero-sum game where negotiation and compromise are perceived as betrayal, whether those groups are political, racial, economic, sexual, religious, spiritual, gender, or generational. And this tribalism of, we have to band together, us against you, might have its place, but right now it's really destroying and dismantling our spiritual community. And I think that we can really look at this and see what we can see where it's living. So in this decisive gap within the spiritual community has created a loss of voice. I spent 10 years learning songs that I'm now told I can't sing. When I wrote Winds of Spirit, I was really rather concerned about whether or not I would be cited for cultural appropriation, even though the winds were giving me direct revelation about their job and function in the world. I had to be thinking about, like, am I making myself an outie or an innie? And a lot of times I think that I get to be on the outie. So, oh well. Black Lives Matters is creating a divisive group within the spiritual community and within neighborhoods. I had a really interesting conversation this week with somebody about, what that meant in her family because there was an interracial couple. And it really gave me a new perspective on it, but I see it in communities actually causing more prejudice, more separation, more divisiveness. Shamanism versus animism. Like where do you fall in the spectrum? Politics. I'm not getting into politics because politics were always something that was a conversation, that you had the right in America, but we got people all over the world, and we've been really lucky in America. You close the curtain and you voted. It's never been such an on the street topic. It's never been the thing that separates who can come to your dinner. This is like, I have friends all across the spectrum in my politics. And you know what? We still all get along about, we love our animals. We love our families. We want to have clean drinking water, all of these things. But we've made the big P, the separating issue. Labeling is one of the big ones. I ran this conference called the Finding Freedom LGBTQ Symposium for years, and I was so clueless about the labeling and what the next generation wants to be called and how they want to be looked at. And so for me, it was like a non-issue because, 40 years ago, we had the big battle. And here, and it's a changing battle. And I do think that gender identity is the next spiritual evolution. Some people say that in Atlantis and those, that we were amorphous, that we were dual gender. And so, we're just years away. So all that said, this has caused a division within the spiritual community. And last year I was having a retreat, and when I asked for some respect around masks, half the people dropped out. And it was just like, really? We're going to go get together and we're going to have a great time. And those who showed up, whether they were masked or not, had a wonderful time. So the polarization in nature is natural. What happens is there's light that's produced when the interaction of unpolarized light hits a material, a particle, or a surface. And so there can be transmission, reflection, light by scattering. And these, as a nature lover, nature shamans, or whatever we want to be, that if I balance my calendar by the natural cycle of things, like it's fall, so what am I harvesting as I get prepared to go into my winter hibernation? Why wouldn't I use the light of the moon or the light of the sun to direct my actions out into the world? So if we use it cooperatively, as our predecessors did, the Vikings used polarized light for navigation. Animals have always used polarized lights for navigation, and we can use it to inform and guide instead of to battle. So I told you, I promised we would talk about the dung beetle. So the dung beetle needs the light of the polarizing moonlight to make a direct getaway from the dung heap. And I love this example because who's going to forget about the little beetle pushing the dung back to its hole? But that without a polarizing moonlight, the beetles are only able to roll their dung balls in random paths. So is this polarizing time for us a time to really get clear and straighten out our paths? I think it is. Insects rely on water, polarizing light for water, for because the water on a leaf will reflects light, and insects that don't have other ways of identifying where they're pollinating will see that reflective light and move right to it. So again, what light are you moving to or from? Instead of like this is a bridge. A drop of light could be a drop of water could be your bridge. The moonlight could be your bridge. And so we need to start to look at the fact that polarization is a natural thing. And it's the way that nature offers us clues to work in harmony with our surroundings. And this is the key. Our role as shamanic leaders and, leaders in the energy movement is to work in harmony with our surroundings. And so when we don't do this, and when we get so rigid in our differences, vax or no vax, that it creates stress, it creates anxiety, it creates depression, it creates increased addiction. And that's not what we need from you right now as community leaders. Do you have any questions or anything that you would let me know if I hadn't? Okay.
Yeah, go for it. You're doing great.
Okay. So how do polarization and fatigue intersect? Well, right now we're having the biggest increase in suicide in young people. They see the adults fighting. They see that we can't get together on anything. And I work in mental health and behavioral health treatment. So this is a time where we're suffering from the biggest loss of our children. Not to mention they were polarized from each other in this lockdown time. So they have a double whammy of us not getting along, being separated from the clan, And so there's a real need for us as leaders to come back together and recover from our own fatigue in order to step back into our rightful thrones. So, there's a loss of hope. There's this idea like the world is going to end soon. Well, you know what? The world is going to end every few billion years because it does. It speeds up, it heats up. If we could, the thing with Anthropocene is we're in a position for, I think, the first time in evolutionary history, and we don't know that because we don't know all the history all the way back, to really do ourselves in. And what can do us in more than, anything else is this polarized, I'm right, you're wrong mentality. And so, the addiction on the rise. So mental fatigue is a psychobiological state caused by prolonged periods of demanding cognitive activity. Phew. And think about it. You're on your internet, you're on your phones, you're the news, there's just there's no place to go. So there's this fatigue that's just setting in from just the demanding of the activity that's being called on us. So in the mental health of our communities, if we take this to a grander schedule, unchecked, these conditions lead to misuse of power, self-righteousness, self-righteous sorcery, and Anthropocene. And so these are some of the ways that this is happening in our community. The splitting, the good versus bad, the projections, our repressed feelings and emotions pinned onto other people's animals and to the earth. The earth too, wherever we can spit it out. The shadow, repressed parts of ourselves that we hide to protect ourselves from others. So that just goes without saying. If you're afraid to speak up, there's parts of yourself you're hiding and your shadow's probably getting bigger. There's the spiritual bypassing. There was somebody who shared this on the Shaman's Cave yesterday. The window shopping for your evolution, like that I can get immediate results with less effort and honest reflection. Wow. And I see that a lot. I've been really trying in the best in my 10-month apprenticeship program to say, could you just stay with this one program for 1 year? And finally I had to give up on that idea because people quit. No, if I can't do 2 or 3 or 4, I'm not doing it. And it's like, I believe that all paths up to the mountain lead to the same vision. They just have a different route. And so if if I stayed with the Inipi for 10 years or 20 years, like a friend of mine who's been there now 30 years, we see the world the same. That wasn't the path for me. So I went to Peru and I hiked the mountains. I went to Chile, I hiked the mountains. I did the Vedic thing. So I've done this, but each time I've gone deeper and deeper and deeper into my work. And I finally found the wind. And once I found the wind spirits, I didn't need any more psychic readings. I didn't need any other teachings. I knew the winds had my back. I found what that vision was for me at the top of that mountain. And I don't mean top like I'm higher than you or lower than you. I'm saying that the vision's really clear for me that the hope of the future is in our communities. So now that I kind of like, okay, Renee, we get it. Oh my God, we are there with you. We are tired of your talking. So we're going to talk about the recovery, and recovery is about oh, thank you, Lynn. Somebody's happy that I'm fearless and I am fearless. I don't know what else to say, and I've always been as honest as I could be. So the recovery is the return to the original state. And so in this conversation, if we're talking about shamanism, if we're returning to the original state of this, then that means we become the leaders of a community that has its differences, that has its individual people. And I think that once we step out of the fight and into the future, we are going to be in a position to really help ourselves. And once we can help ourselves, we can help others. So you might have forgotten in all of this fighting and all of this, separation, what is in your shamanic path of recovery? What's in your toolkit? And they might all look different to you, but these are the ones that I came up with and would like to share a little bit of piece about how we can go back to these in order to find our way forward. So we have direct revelation. Something the winds told me was that we lost our ability for direct revelation a few thousand years ago when we went from outside inside. In those old houses, the windows were called wind eyes because wind has always been synonymous with spirit. Ruach. Happy Rosh Hashanah to those of you who are listening. Happy New Year. Wind, Ruach, wind. Nirvana, no wind. Holy Spirit, wind. So what happened was these houses of worship took our direct revelation through nature, which I call wind, and we went from the outside into the inside. We were looking at God through these windows, and all of a sudden, we needed an intermediary to tell us what spirit was telling us. So this path of recovery is to remember that you have direct access to the wind always. It's an individualized program. And so Evelyn has her way of working with the spirits. I have my way of working with the spirits. You have your way. Power. One of the things that our direct revelation and our helping spirits can give us is power. That's like putting your foot on the gas and getting somewhere. If you just remember that you have these helping spirits. The awakening compass is a tool that I've used let me just go on to them each, because the awakening compass, nonlinear, unique gifts, community, respect. I have a little thing for each of us. So the direct revelation, when you go out in nature and listen to spirit. One day the wind started to speak to me and I'm thinking like, no, you're not really. And if I think back when Chile, the Mapuche grandmother, said to me, this name, Trey Uncle, means the sound between passing things. It's big and you're going to have to grow into it. And when I learned really about the wind, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that is the sound between passing things. And when you listen, it speaks. That we're individual, but we're all connected through the breath. When you come into this evolution, this earth evolution, this earth experiment, the first thing you do when you exit the womb is you take a wind breath. It brings your spirit into your body. When you leave this earth plane, you exhale that breath back into the connection. So Evelyn's in Maine, I trust.
Yeah.
So when I'm breathing out today, I'm breathing out love that's going to reach Evelyn in a couple of days. And then in a couple more weeks, I'd be breathing it out in person because I'm going to be in Maine. That's where my mom happens to live. And so,
great.
But we're connected. We're connected through the wind breath. So as individuals, though, this is the part that we like to spiritual bypass. We don't look at our own individual work, our triggers. Is this conversation today that I'm giving you triggering you? Oh, aha, maybe I've triggered something. And so what we need to do is look at these triggers and look at our trauma and our core wounds around them. And there's nothing quicker, more expeditious for those of you who are healers is to look who comes into your office in any given week, or, you know, look what's coming into my wind clan to see what triggers and what trauma and wounds come up for me. And, you know, a recent one for me has been I do the branding and marketing for behavioral health care, and we're opening an eating disorder unit. Now, here I am, a chef, and they started talking about trying on clothes in the dressing room. And I learned, this is 35 years in, that I always wore baggy clothes. And that this woman was saying that that's a trauma response. And so these triggers are cunning, baffling, and powerful, and they will always come up to show you what your next piece of healing is so that you can be of service to your community. You know, so it's your work to identify your personal triggers from childhood. It's not my work to identify your triggers. My work is to stand as a leader and offer a mirror back so that you can see clearly. Pure aggression. You know, it's a contagious disease. We clump together. Oh, you're not in this clan. Oh, you're, you know, and we can use it to polarize ourselves in this tribe mentality that I have something you don't have. You know, that's just not true. Oops. So we have power. I was mentioning that. You know, I was mentioning that if energy was thrown at me, I had powerful tools. And one of the powerful tools I noticed that I had last week was that I called to Shu, the wind god, and Shu actually moved me to a different plane of experience so that if darts were being tossed at me, I was here and they were coming at a different level. We have the power to move to a different level of experience, above the polarization, above the fatigue. We just have to remember that we have that power. So you know, most of us who live nature-based traditions we work on a nature cycle. So this is my awakening compass, and it's about the east, this Eurus, the east wind. And these winds, for those of you who are curious, they have defined our perceptual, our conceptual reality since before the written word. You find those those wind spirits are on the Lascaux caves, thousands and thousands of years before we were really communicating between tribes. These wind spirits have orchestrated our consensual reality, these 4-directional winds. So if we go back to these 4-directional winds, we can understand what's going on in our mind. Notice will teach us what's going on in our emotions. And this is what the journey will do a little bit later. The West will about our physical actions, and the North about our spirit. Now, some traditions have those labeled a little bit different, but for us, these are the ones we do. I'll get back to this.
I want to just reflect back on the what you said earlier about triggers. What I like to remind people is the world will always be full of triggers. And I think of it like Velcro. So there are lots of hooks in the world. Our job is to get rid of the fuzzy piece of the Velcro that they stick on. There are always triggers out there. And so focusing right here, as you said brilliantly, is the way to not be triggered. You know, the hooks have nowhere to stick.
Right. Yeah. An old friend of mine said, you know, where's your Velcro? And kind of you just said that too. What energy does a human family inject in turns corrupts polarities that nature clearly does not? Well, it just goes back into for us our work with ourselves, because really the only people we can change is ourselves. We're all here having individual spiritual experiences, and yet we're all connected. So my work has always been, if you turn it back to your own triggers, your own personal work, then the world starts to look different. Mm-hmm. It just does. You can then sit down and have dinner, you know, with somebody who has an opposing political view and find what the commonalities are. See, we're so busy looking for the differences, we're not seeing that we're sharing the same bread, the same butter, the same pasta that we just all put our energy into. And so part of this exhausting effort of ours is looking for the differences instead of the similarities. And trust me, if you turn your attention back to looking for the similarities between you and your neighbors for 1 week, you will turn things around. Just recently, I've been building a house, and the man putting in the septic tank was clearly from an opposing viewpoint on things. And he came through with his backhoe and decimated my property in my world. That was my view. Oh my God, you have no concern for my property, blah, 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 blah. And so I was triggered. I mean, I sat on a rock watching him do something that I knew I was going to have to change the next day because I was so triggered I couldn't speak. I froze. But I didn't say anything because I've learned as a leader, I need to contain myself until I can understand what's going on better in order to make an effective point. So on Monday, he comes back because I had to tell him that I had the electrician move his wiring. And he's there like, I don't understand. Why didn't you just tell me? And here I am to this kind of a bully kind of guy. And I looked at him, I said, you reminded me of my dad, and I froze. I said, I'm very nature centric. I said, how you move the land was so disruptive to my soul that I couldn't speak. And so the next time he was moving something, he goes, Renee, how does this feel? He goes, I was really just trying to take care of you. I thought the other guy wasn't giving you what you were supposed to have. And so it turned out he did take on that fatherly role. He thought I was the contractor hadn't done something. And so he stepped into dad. I stepped into freeze. And then when we were able to have a real honest conversation, he understood that this was huge for me. And he started to ask me about, where do you want this rock placed, Renee? Where are you going to put the fire pit back together? How do you want it? And he put the yard back better than it looked before. Now, had I come from a polarizing standpoint, I could have gotten into his politics. I could have gotten into all of these other things. Instead of coming from my real heart space, God, you made me freeze. I couldn't. And it was a game changer for me. And so we all have those opportunities to have a different experience. And it's non-linear. I was just telling you the story about when there was darts being thrown at me, I was removed from the situation, and it was a non-linear experience. And then that level of dart throwing stopped, I was able to step back into the mundane world. And then every night put up my no trespassing signs, put my wind zip and do all of the tools that I had to be more present. So we've learned these tools that we can go to the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world on command with our spiritual helpers. This started to become really apparent a few years ago when I was standing in a bank line, and I realized I was in a different reality than the people standing next to me. I mean, raise your hands. Who's had this experience? If you've had that experience, put your hand in the chat so I can see like that. And that, that we've all had this experience where but this time jumping is really, really important because it gives us the opportunity to move out of the exhaustion, out of the polarization long enough to shift and make a difference. This is the really most important one, or one of the most important one, is you each bring a unique gift. Some of us hear things, some of us know things, some of us taste things, some of us smell things, some of us see things. Some of us use Reiki, some of us use shamanic Reiki, some of us use EFT. There is so many different paths up that mountain, but the uniqueness of all our gifts is what makes it a connected world. Some of us paint, some of us cook. And I use the metaphor of cooking a lot because cooking saved my life. Cooking was my access point into understanding that if I was so present to chopping onions and peeling carrots, that I could listen to spirit. I didn't know that until that moment. So, what is yours? What is your unique gift? What do you bring to this healing? Community is key. I believe the hope of our future lies in the community. And it's been great having all of these online communities and being able to reach people in Denmark and Australia and all of this. But I just joined the board. The community board, me and the board members. And, they tricked me a little bit. I'm in charge of the beach. I thought that was going to be parties. Well, no, it's the boat ramp, all of these other things. But what I realize is I'm part of a community, and I have 5 or 6 people on this beach community that will help me do it if I ask. In Peru, there's this phrase called Aini, today for me, tomorrow for you. And at this time of the harvest, this becomes really important. Like yesterday, my neighbors gave me squash and a pepper. A couple weeks ago, they gave me a cabbage and I made them coleslaw. So it's about a reciprocity. It's about, that I show up to help you. And yeah, maybe I'm going to get a reward, but truthfully, the reward is in helping you. And we just forget that part. So I've been going back and forth around this, that the shamans are the spiritual leaders and the healers of the community. This is the part we forgot. We're not supposed to be on the battlefields. We're supposed to be the leaders, the visionaries, the healers of community. We're supposed to help people. We're supposed to help heal the battle and bring peace. We're not supposed to engage the battle. There's plenty of people out there who can do that. But if you were called to this path, it's because you are here to hold the vision. And the vision might not look like what you think it looks like. Your work is to be the container for a bigger, broader vision than you can possibly see. It's physical, it's psychological, it's spiritual, emotional support that we're here to offer. And to the animism, it's the belief that all things in nature have a spirit or a soul. So we're adept at connecting to the natural world. So we're adept at talking to the deer in our yard. Or, we're the flowers, the trees. We have all of these other supports that we get to hold. Respect. And this is one we're having a real hard time with, respecting other people for their differences. Let's see. Well, so the wind is, there's a question about making sand mandalas on the beach. If you've ever seen the monks who travel around and they make their mandalas and then they give it back to the wind or to the river, because it isn't permanent. So perhaps it's not learning how to work and make your mandala on the beach. It's really learning to be more in your impermanence and understanding that these grains of sand that you're going to put there might be only there temporarily. And so maybe the lesson isn't really the mandala, but the impermanence of them. So this is the part that this is the important part, is the service work. We're here to be of service. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and change the whole world. My favorite story of all time is Carolyn Mace's story about the woman who worked at the post office, who, when any time anyone came in, she made them smile. She thanked them for coming to get their mail. So it's like, can you be in service to the little things in your life? Because those little things add up in a whole lot of other ways. And the biggest one that I really like to say is there's hope. You're here to offer hope. So, yeah, will the world end? Probably. But is that the hope you want to, is that the hope you want to lead with? Or do you want to offer somebody that there's some hope in the wind, that there's some hope in the healing, there's some hope in the triggering, there's some hope here? Our biggest container right now, if we were going to hold one container, I'd say, can we hold a container of hope? So that's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to end this. You know all of these. These are all of the interventions you can do, and probably have more, to alleviate unrest, unsettled, and to appease the spirits and restore hope. Dancing, storytelling, community ceremony, service, healing, journey circles, divination, being a spiritual warrior, and wind work.
You're really talking about not even just shamanism in that way, but going back to the way our deep ancestors were present on the earth. Our
Exactly.
deep ancestors lived in community, not only with the human community, but the community of the animals and the birds and the insects and the plants and the trees, because they depended on each other for survival.
Exactly. We are interdependent. We're not deep. We're dependent, interdependent, and and individuals. This is a 3D experience. You get to go between the planes. So I love this part I love the human experience. It's my favorite. And I'm very practical. It's like someone says, well, why don't you just do your shamanic? I love running a behavioral health company. I love making a difference with graphic design and branding. I love it. It's part of the gift that I bring to the healing. So there's an exercise called a wind walk, which I can't really get into, but if you go over to my pages and stuff, you'll find out about all of that. Because I want to take us on this journey, and I talk too much. I was on my soapbox a little bit too long. So I'm just going to take us on a quick, short journey, and you can revisit it in your own time, okay? Questions or anything before we get in there? Or?
Nope, rock and roll, and I'm going to shut my mic off, so it's just you.
Okay. So I called this the restoration and recovery journey. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to call to each wind to show us where we have polarizing: the east wind for thoughts, the south wind, notice, for emotions, the west wind polarizing actions. And then we're going to take it all to Boreas and see how this is helping us serve our community or not. Okay? And I'll do a little talking, since you probably don't know the winds so well, but I'm first going to call into the 4 winds with my wind whistle. Eurus, be here with us today. Help us to see those thoughts, those polarizing thoughts that keep us separate from our fellows. Notice the south wind of emotions and desires. Help us to see where our feelings and our needs are out of alignment, that they're keeping us separate from others. Zephyrus, the west wind, come here and show us about our physical actions, our physical activities. Help us to become more in line. Today for me, tomorrow for you. And Boreas, that north wind that lives farther than the furthest mountain from our mind's eye. Take us on this journey, Boreas, to show us the truth of our becoming. I invite you to become comfortable. Close your eyes, put your 2 feet on the floor or lie down. Find yourself in your favorite spot in nature. Face the east wind. Eurus, I call to you. Help me to see the truth about my polarizing thoughts. Show me where in my mind, memory, and beliefs I am polarized, separate. Second, I'm going to blow that seed right into your heart, into the heart of our community. As we are all connected through the wind.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And I have to tell you, when the north wind was evoked, I got a chill through my body as if the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in here. It's like,
I love that.
I love it. I love it too. So we have just 2 minutes left. If you have any last words that you'd like to share.
Let's see.
Even the title of your free gift, anything that feels.
Oh, okay. So my title of my free gift is how to tend to this inner garden with your daily checklist. And it's some of the wind work tools. And what it will do is it will also get you connected to our community. I have the Wind Clan on Facebook, and we do all of these tools and things you can find, like the wind walk and things like that. And we have a wind spinner there. And one of the free gifts is to download the wind spirit cards, which are the 32 helping wind spirits in the back of this book. And what surprised me the most was that I thought wind was wind. And then I learned that all over the world, these winds had different qualities and different job descriptions. And they can be called upon. Like when I needed help last week, Shu came. Shu's never come for me. And so they don't always come, and you don't want to call them all up because you might have a real windy day. But we're here, I'm here. And if you have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you so much, Renee. And I want to thank you for being a part of the summit as well, not just your presentation today, but the energy that you put out in the world. Each one of us doing our part, helping to shift the collective in a way where it interweaves like all those ingredients in the food you make.
That's right. And have some pasta tonight for dinner.
Hey, sounds good. So I want to let everybody know that if you check out the chat, we have the link for you to upgrade, because you're going to already have a conflict coming up next. There are 2 speakers on 2 different tracks. So up next is Chris Kyle with Nature-Based Leadership in track 1. And track 2, we have Gregory Reese Smith, The Shamanic Way to Success in Your Life. So many thanks to you, Renee. Be well, take care. And when you're in Maine, maybe we'll cross paths. That'll be good.
Thank you. Blessings.
Take care. Bye-bye.